The circumstances of Jews in Western and Central Europe varied greatly. For the Jews in Poland who came under the rule of Tsarist Russia, their living conditions and social status were particularly difficult. Moving from a country with a relatively strong secular tradition and a deep Catholic influence to an Orthodox country with systemic restrictions on Jews, their situation became even more challenging. The Tsarist government required Jews to live and operate only within designated areas known as the Pale of Settlement, primarily located in former Polish territories. Jews were not allowed to leave these areas or relocate outside of them. Only a limited number of Jews, with special permission from the authorities, could travel or work outside the Pale. The government officially stated that these restrictions were intended to maintain social order. In addition to residential restrictions, Jews were prohibited from engaging in certain occupations, forbidden to own land, and required to pay higher taxes. Military service was also particularly demanding. Jewish boys aged 12 to 15 were required to serve in the reserve, followed by up to 25 years of active service. There were pressures for assimilation within the military, and some families tried to avoid conscription by concealing their children's ages or using other methods, while the government deployed agents to ensure adequate recruitment. By 1850, the Jewish population in Russia was approximately 2.4 million, and by the end of the 19th century, it had grown to nearly 5 million, accounting for roughly two-thirds of the world's Jewish population at the time. During the reign of Tsar Alexander II, somewhat more lenient policies were implemented for Jews, such as relaxing migration restrictions and allowing some to hold public office. Some Jews moved to cities such as St. Petersburg and Moscow, which had previously been off-limits, and Jewish students began to enroll in universities. Nevertheless, deeply rooted anti-Jewish prejudices persisted, especially in remote rural areas, where some residents held superstitious or negative views of Jews. In this context, the impact of these more tolerant policies was limited. In March 1881, Alexander II was assassinated. Since a Jewish woman was among those implicated, a series of violent incidents against Jews broke out across Russia, initially in southern Ukraine, and quickly spread nationwide. Jews were subjected to attacks and expulsions, and some local officials and military personnel either tolerated or were involved in the events. Members of different social classes were implicated to varying degrees, and only a few intellectuals spoke out or openly opposed the violence. In May 1882, the newly appointed Minister of the Interior, Nikolai Ignatieff, issued the May Laws, further restricting Jewish residents, prohibiting new settlements outside the Pale, and allowing residents to return Jews who violated these rules to the designated areas. The laws also imposed limitations on Jews' occupations and property rights and reduced the proportion of Jewish students in secondary schools and universities. Over the following decades, violent incidents targeting Jews continued in many parts of Russia. In 1891, over 10,000 Jews were expelled from Moscow and Kiev. Between 1903 and 1908, anti-Jewish riots reached a peak, affecting hundreds of cities and causing large numbers of casualties. For example, in the Kishinev incident, over 50 people were killed and more than 500 injured. In Odessa, along the Black Sea, approximately 400 people died during 4 days of unrest. Similar events also occurred in Ukraine, Romania, Hungary, and other Eastern European countries under Russian influence. Jews became the primary victims of social unrest. This large-scale wave of anti-Jewish violence prompted mass migration westward. Beginning in 1881, this migration continued for more than 30 years, and by the outbreak of World War I in 1914, approximately 3 million Jews had left Russia and Eastern Europe. A small number settled in Western Europe. Some went to Palestine or South Africa, but the vast majority, around 80%, crossed the Atlantic and settled in the Americas, including the United States, Canada, and parts of South America. This wave of migration changed the global distribution of Jews, ending their concentration in Eastern Europe and Russia and spreading them more broadly around the world.